What do you think the president is either pushing for or concerned about that he has not publicly made up his mind on this decision yet? Maybe he's done so privately, but he hasn't told us publicly where he's going to go here.
Right. I can imagine the president saying to this group of advisors, I'm not loving our options here. I think he clearly wants a deal to try and get out of this situation, declare victory, open the strait to get oil out into international markets, lower the price of gasoline at the pump, alleviate some of the economic concern in this country, thinking of the November election. But on the other hand, he knows if he makes a bad deal, he's already been criticized by several Republican members of the Senate. Even though we don't know the terms of the deal, he's very worried he's going to look like he's given away the store. So I think when you add to the fact, honestly, none of us really know what this memorandum of understanding says or who's agreed to it, particularly in the case of Iran, whether they have anybody who can make a final decision. So I think it's a very unsettling situation, and it entirely benefits Iran. Every day that goes by, from the ceasefire we're in now to this proposed 60-day extension of the ceasefire, it removes further and further from any likelihood that we will again resume the use of military force. That's victory for the regime in Iran.
So you would be against taking the 60-day extension?
I was against the ceasefire. This regime understands only when it's being pounded on. And now, as that pressure is relieved, if you think it's been tough to negotiate this 11 or 12-point memorandum of understanding, wait till we get to the negotiations over the nuclear program. The president likes to say that our adversaries in negotiations are sometimes tapping us along. Well, he's being tapped along by the Iranians right now.
But if this deal, this temporary deal, reopens the Strait of Hormuz, do you believe that's a good thing?
No, because I think necessarily it opens the channels of international commerce for Iran to sell its oil. I think the right thing to do, just looking at the issue of the Strait, keep the blockade against the shipment of Iranian oil and open up the Arab side of the Gulf, get the Gulf Arab oil out into international commerce, let that bring the price internationally of oil down. I think we can do it. I think we've got the military capacity to do it. The Wall Street Journal reported earlier this week we've escorted at least 2 tankers out, one of them a Greek tanker of 2 million barrels of oil capacity. I'm not saying it's without risk or danger, and it would require, in all likelihood, the use of military force. But that's how to keep the squeeze on Iran, but relieve the extortionate pressure they're putting on now on the international economy, get the Arab oil flowing.
And the White House has said the president is focused on this from a national security lens, a statesman lens. He keeps getting asked, though, about the obvious domestic politics of this, which Republicans are keenly aware of here at home. This is what he said about whether or not the midterms have an impact on his decision making.
They thought they were going to outweight me. You know, we'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms.
You know, the next election, whether it's a midterm or not. So you have a very short window for doing anything having to do with war. But I don't view that window. I view it, I have to do what's right.
As someone who was his national security advisor, has been in the Situation Room, what do you make of those comments?
I will guarantee he's focused on the midterm elections. I think he's very worried about it. He's in a situation where he doesn't know what to do. He would like to have some declaration of victory, some evidence that he can say, I've achieved all our objectives, and now we can allow the Strait of Hormuz to open to alleviate economic pressure in this country. But he looks at the record of the Obama administration. He fears being compared to it. He's very close to cutting an Obama kind of deal, and he knows that's bad news for him, too.
Do you think the deal will look like the Obama-era nuclear deal?
Well, again, we don't have a document we can really analyze, but there's a lot of talk about setting up a huge investment fund in Iran to be funded with frozen Iranian assets. I think the frozen Iranian assets in a perfect world, yes, we would use in Iran, but not with this regime. If you unfreeze those assets, as appears to be, as is discussed in the press, an element of this agreement, you would simply strengthen the hand of the religious fanatics running the Revolutionary Guard. Completely contrary to our interest. It would put them back in power, allow them to rebuild their nuclear program, rebuild their terrorist organizations, rebuild their ballistic missile capability, and rebuild their ability to repress their own people. What's the point of that?
The Islamic Republic of Iran since 1979 has been committed to resistance against America. That's part of their identity. It's not just a policy. And President Trump is now in a dilemma of his own making because he pulled out of the Obama nuclear deal. He called it the worst deal ever. And he's now stepped into a situation in which he may be forced to provide Iran some pretty significant sanctions relief if he wants to reach at least a near-term resolution.
Yep. And I know even some of these things, you can't put the genie back in the bottle about the Strait of Hormuz, right? Always had been a threat. Now it's a reality. That's permanent. I know you've got new information about something at the very core of this, right? Iran's ability to build nuclear weapons, right? Trump had said last summer after the strikes that ability was obliterated. Then, of course, this war began, and here we are now. But you have new information on that. What have you learned?
So when you speak to people inside Tehran now, I think it's pretty clear that they've reached almost an internal consensus that the regime needs nuclear weapons as a cloak of protection. It doesn't take a grand strategist to look at the world and say the countries that gave up their nuclear programs, whether that was Saddam Hussein's Iraq or Gaddafi's Libya or post-Soviet Ukraine, they all made themselves vulnerable to external intervention. North Korea has nuclear weapons. It has this kind of cloak of immunity. So the danger here is that Iran has what they call these missile cities, which are potentially even deeper underground than some of their nuclear sites. And so any oral commitment Iran gives to not pursuing nuclear weapons is not something we can believe. And so we're going to have to stay incredibly vigilant about their clandestine activities.
Which is pretty incredible because prior to this, not only did every leader of Iran always say that they don't want a nuclear weapon because it was against the supreme leader, but they also, they would give all sorts of details on this. The fact that you're saying that there is a universal consensus that they need one would appear to be maybe not a full shift from all, but from some, a shift.
They're not going to admit that publicly, but I think internally they realize that there's obviously profound mistrust with the United States. On 2 occasions while we were negotiating, they were attacked. And so, I think this is a challenge which is going to be with us beyond President Trump's presidency.
Are you surprised 2 hours in Situation Room? He said there'd be an announcement, nothing?
I'm not surprised because, unfortunately, when the president thinks of himself as this world-class deal maker, and there are no great deals here. If you want to resolve this issue, he's likely going to have to provide Iran sanctions relief or the unfreezing of assets, things he criticized President Obama for.